Bang. Clang. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples. Whether you've been a member here for centuries or whether you walked through our doors a minute ago for the first time, you are very welcome to be here. Our mission statement is printed on the front of your order of service. It states that we are a welcoming congregation freely seeking intellectual and spiritual growth. We strive to create a larger community of peace, justice, and love. Together we are encouraged to grow spiritually in fellowship with each other, joining in worship, celebration, education, reflection, and discussion. And we try to do all this in the spirit of love and acceptance, honoring one another and supporting each other in times of need. We invite everyone to join us on the patio after the service, through the front doors and out through, and engage with each other in conversation and getting to know one another. That's one of the best parts of coming to church, I think. There are hearing devices for those who are hard of hearing and larger print hymnals for those who might be have difficulty in reading. So if you have that need, raise your hand and our ushers will bring those to you. I would ask you to turn off any electronic devices that you may have carried into the sanctuary. Make sure I don't have mine on. I was handed a name tag. I hope everybody has their name tags on, just so we can get to know you a little bit better. For me, it's an absolute necessity for you to have your name tags, and I realize I never wear mine, so I walk around just sort of blithely thinking everybody knows who I am, but that's not always true. I'm Tony. Just Tony. Let us enter now into the spirit of worship as we begin with our prelude. This is the first time that Anne and I share the pulpit. Welcome to the kindred souls and the breathless pilgrims. Welcome to the centered and the seeking, to the hopeful and the weary.
Welcome, wanderers, worshipers, lovers of leaving. Welcome to the joyous and to the grieving.
Welcome to those who inspire and to those who are awestruck, the students and the teachers, the artists and the engineers.
Welcome to those waiting for the world to change and those waiting to change it.
Welcome to you. Welcome, spirit of love, freedom, healing, and life.
May this be a place of peace and community.
May this be a time of authenticity and opportunity.
May ours be a movement strengthened and inspired by our roots and growing into our hopes.
And as Anne goes down and attempts to light the chalice, let's join together in the chalice lighting response that is found in your order of service. In the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, we gather this day. May the flame we now kindle be a symbol of the unity we seek. We're going to be singing hymn number 1017 in the Teal hymnal, Building a New Way. Building a New Way was the theme of this year's General Assembly in Portland, Oregon, the subject of our service today. And Steve Espinoza is going to come forward and help us with this song, which a number of us haven't sung yet. So it's pretty easy. So I'll let Steve take over here.
Great. This is a really nice, rousing song. It's kind of a rallying call for all of us today. So, okay, and rise as you're able.
We'll do it again. A little over 3 weeks ago, on June 24th, somewhere around 4,500 Unitarian Universalists from around the country and around the globe gathered in Portland, Oregon for what is simply called General Assembly, or GA for short. Among those 4,500 were my wife Ann and myself and Doug Bracey, who was there in Portland visiting his daughter, but also took a few days to join the hordes at the Portland Convention Center for what is a remarkable event. General Assembly is the annual meeting of Unitarian Universalist Association, or UUA, which is an organization made up of over 1,000 congregations in the United States. Someone once described the event to me as a combination of state fair, summer camp, educational intensive, social witness, annual meeting, and religious experience all wrapped up into one. It is a wonderful, inspiring, and exhausting event spread out over 5 days. Each year, General Assembly is held in a different part of the country. In the past 5 years, the meetings have bounced from Charlotte, North Carolina, to Phoenix, Arizona, to Louisville, Kentucky, to Providence, Rhode Island, and to Portland. And next year, it will return to Columbus, Ohio, the place where Ann and I experienced our first General Assembly in 1985. There are worships and workshops. 216 were listed in this year's program. Business meetings and affinity group meetups, social justice opportunities, and just plain social get-togethers for fun and relaxation. There are regional gatherings and youth gatherings and young adult gatherings and off-site gatherings of institutions that work under the umbrella of the larger association. There's an exhibit hall where you can find just about anything and everything UU and more, with many, many opportunities to lighten your wallet on all sorts of UU paraphernalia, from books, cards, T-shirts, ministerial robes and stoles for those of us who are interested in those, crafts, you name it. The event is kicked off by a colorful and boisterous parade of congregational banners within the meeting hall, a welcome from our elected leaders, and an opening night worship. The business sessions of each meeting begin with a time for singing and a brief worship, and there are times for reports from all of the association departments, ministries, and partner institutions. And the business of the association is handled in full parliamentary fashion, giving any of the nearly 2,000 registered delegates the right to speak on any of the issues before the body. This is so, of course, because our association is built on the idea of democracy. There's no church hierarchy here. In fact, the organization exists because the member congregations have covenanted together in mutual support and solidarity. Each congregation is run democratically and maintains autonomy within the larger association. The Unitarian Universalist Association bylaw states that the primary purpose of the association is to serve the needs of its member congregation and implement its principles. Delegates vote on all organizational issues, from detailed bylaws and structural changes to key leadership positions, all the way to the establishment and changes to the covenant that binds the association together. This has been so from the beginning of this association in 1961 upon the merger of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America. But even before that, the democratic process has been central to the polity of each of these founding organizations dating back to 1825. Today we get to talk a little bit about this year's GA, partly as our duty as delegates representing you, and partly in the hope that we can inspire you to make the pilgrimage to Columbus next June as a delegate from this congregation. Let's join together now as we remain seated in singing The Spirit of Life, hymn number 123, as we deepen into a time of sharing and then meditation. Please join me in that spirit, spoken and then silent meditation with these words that were adapted from the Sunday morning service at General Assembly. Spirit of life, there is much brokenness in this world. As hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees flee with their lives, as drug wars in Mexico result in the disappearance of thousands and leave thousands of women compromised, as the United States imprisons millions, too many of them black and brown bodies, we pray for justice. We know that there are too many wars to name and too many people killed in the name of the law. As we hold sacred each and every human life and life itself in the form of our earthly home, we ask now for healing, wholeness, and justice. We pray that the light that burns in every life, the love that resides in every heart, hears our call for justice and rises up to heal all that is broken within our own hearts, within our little corner of life, within our wider reach. We hope that our own practices and expressions of faith will invite the world to live with undying love and fervor as we strive to become all that we are called to be. We pray that this call will resound across the many intersections of divinity, humanity, and indifference. And as we answer, let it be with voices united. Let it be with hearts bound together by purpose. Let it be with emblazoned spirits that refuse to be repressed. Let it be with minds forged by an understanding of love and reason that not only embraces indifference, but is willing to fight for the right to be different. Spirit of love, we hold close all those whose hearts have borne the brunt of grief and sorrow and loss. We call upon the light of hope to restore the vision of those who seem to be losing sight while fighting to lead meaningful lives. And for ourselves, we seek the fortitude to rise above our own concerns, to join the struggle against inequities that continue to oppress so many in this world. And we seek the courage to speak and act out our truth, the truth of our hearts, in hopes of embodying real and lasting change.
Good morning. I was excited and privileged to serve as a delegate for the very first time from this beloved UU congregation of Greater Naples. How many of you have ever attended a GA, a General Assembly? Wow, that's impressive, quite a few. Great. For most of us, our connection as Unitarian Universalists is to our congregation, to the people that we sit here in the pews with, to the people we work alongside in the garden, or attend a fellowship circle, or sit in on a committee with. It's quite a different experience to be amongst over 4,000 Unitarian Universalists from across the country. As Tony described, it is kind of part state fair and a huge educational opportunity, but also an annual meeting. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the annual meeting part of it, which can be a little bit on the dry side, at least into trying to describe it. You know that we love our long titles and acronyms, so hold on, you're going to hear a few of those as I talk. The business sessions are where the official work of the General Assembly happens, and it is a little bit like a town meeting, only with a lot more passion. But it is where our fifth principle, the use of the democratic process, goes into action. Our congregation is allowed 6 delegates to participate in the business sections. That means that you can speak and vote. And you don't have to be in Portland, Oregon, or Columbus, Ohio to do so. We now can have delegates who are delegates while at home in their living room or their lanai, and you can participate and vote. And it was really kind of exciting to be sitting in the hall and have somebody speak from home. A lot of times there were technical difficulties, and that wasn't as much fun. But it was really great getting their input from, Kansas or something. Let me report back on what we actually accomplished at this GA. Perhaps most significantly, we passed a statement of conscience on reproductive justice. This was the culmination of a 4-year process, which is called the process of study action issues. The idea is that all of the congregations vote on an issue that they think is of significant importance and has religious relevance, and that we as congregations are to study that issue over the period of 4 years, and then our delegates bring our feedback to General Assembly 1 year, bring it back here, and bring it back to General Assembly, and then after 4 years, it usually culminates in a statement. So this year was the final year of the study action issue on reproductive justice. And if any of you tuned in, it was 4,000 people in a room wordsmithing a statement. So you can kind of picture it. But it really was pretty awesome. And we were finally voting on a statement which reflected UU values around reproductive issues, addressing perspectives that took into account inequalities of racial, economic, and gender perspectives. You can read the full statement on the UUA website if you're interested. The next study action issue that we will be looking at, and I'm hoping that over the next 4 years we will, as a congregation, actually spend some time really looking at this issue. The one that has been chosen is escalating inequality. And I know that we've already had a couple of programs just in the time that Tony and I have been here that have addressed this. One very excellent speaker during the Progressive Voices this winter. The study action issue, as I said, is a long-term process where we are invited to go in depth to really get to know an issue and think about how we as UUs think about that issue and what we can do to take action around a particular issue. in addition to the study action issues, very often General Assembly will choose to make a statement about matters that have come up in a much more timely fashion, not so much of a multi-year process. And when General Assembly chooses to take a stand on something more timely, it is called an action of immediate witness. And we took 3 of those this year. The first one was that we passed a statement or action of immediate witness to support the Black Lives Matter movement. There were many workshops addressing the issue of Black Lives Matter. I attended at least 2 or 3 of them, hearing what other congregations were doing on the issue of the disproportionate number of young Black people who are being killed, as well as some of the issues in terms of prison incarceration rates. We also passed an action of immediate witness on climate justice initiatives, essentially calling on UUs to really be energetically, enthusiastically supportive of issues related to climate justice, whether on a local, regional, or global level. And thirdly, we passed a statement calling for an end to the detention of immigrant children or families who have been kept in detention centers by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. You can read all about this on the UUA website, and I'd also encourage you, I know a number of you went on to view some of the proceedings at GA while they were happening, and you can view a lot of the programs still through the UUA website, and there were some incredibly powerful speakers. Well, while it feels fairly momentous to be part of that business portion of GA and be part of that democratic process, one of the most valuable and I think fun parts of going to GA for me is going to the workshops. As Tony said, there were over 200 different workshops to choose from. Everything from young adult ministry to social media to storytelling, crowdfunding, stewardship, and lots of things about social justice. It's a great, excuse me. As I said, it's a great way to find out what's happening in other congregations. For instance, at one workshop, I heard about interfaith organizing initiatives. And this is where churches partner with other churches of other faiths within their community to address a social concern by pooling those resources. It's so easy for us to be kind of insular, and it's good to be reminded of the power that comes from collaboration. I was also impressed with a program developed at the Dallas UU Church called Faith Forward. They've developed a very comprehensive adult program that's been designed to help newcomers find their niche within the congregation a little bit more easily. We do a great job here as we should of welcoming newcomers, and I think we try very hard to keep them here and help them to feel welcome. But sometimes it can be kind of hard to navigate. The Dallas Church has developed a program that is specifically designed to help new people find linkages within the congregation. They kind of learn how to do church, the culture of church, but also are able to deepen their understanding of what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. So I thought there might be some things that we could learn from them. I also attended a few workshops that were offered by the College of Social Justice about how to make service learning trips, such as the trip that a group from here recently took to Haiti, how to make these service learning trips both more successful, more meaningful for the people who participate in them, but what I also thought was very interesting, more meaningful for all of those of us who don't go off to someplace else? How can we engage the whole congregation in feeling a part of service learning? Well, there was a whole lot more, and I could keep going on, and I'd be happy to talk with you after church or any other time about some of the other things that I attended there. I hope that we have, and Tony's remarks will help get you interested in going to Columbus, Ohio next year. We know a great vegetarian restaurant there.
You can ask Ann or me about that story. Let's join in a responsive reading in your gray hymnals, number 651. This responsive reading was used in one of the workshops I went to, updated from the figures that were in your hymnal, written by Norman Cousins some time ago. He lists a body of 4 billion cells, and now we are a body of 7 billion cells. The body is humankind. I am a single cell in a body of 7 billion cells. The body is humankind. I am a single cell. My needs are individual, but they are not unique. I will work for human unity and human peace, for a moral order in harmony with the order of the universe. A society in which we need not live beneath our moral capacity and in which justice has a life of its own. Ann and I went to Portland, and we stayed with in the home of a member of a local congregation, not the main church in Portland, but a number of the congregations gather and create a system of placing people who come and visit their city in homes so that your experience can be much more comfortable, much more relaxed, much more home-like, and you get to know the city a lot better. So if you should choose to go to Columbus or any other GA after this year, then I would urge you to follow that example. It is a fundraising event for those congregations that choose to do that. We paid a much lower fee than we would have if we'd gone to a hotel, but enjoyed the hospitality and the friendship and the conversation with our host, and it was truly a wonderful experience. In light of fundraising, let me raise up the fact that this congregation has its own needs, its own missions, its own wonderful way of doing things, and our collection each week is in support of all the things that we do together as a congregation. So I urge you to dig deep and offer up for this morning's offering, which will now be received. On the first night of General Assembly in Portland, our association's president, Peter Morales, casually tried to recognize folks who had been to the most GAs. And he mentioned the names of a couple of people he knew who had attended over 40 of our annual meetings. This was, of course, greeted by amazement and general applause. A few minutes later, someone whispered in his ear, and he corrected himself to say that the Reverend Richard Gilbert, who preached here at UUCGN this past February, had actually been to all the General Assemblies since the merger in 1961. Imagine the changes that Richard has witnessed over those 55 years. Changes that have often been reflective of what's going on in the wider culture. We have gone through the civil rights movement, the women's movement, and the GLBT movement. We responded to nuclear weapon proliferation and to wars from Vietnam to the Middle East. We've been aware of healthcare issues and ecological issues and immigration issues. We tried to figure out how to respond to the rise of religious conservatism and the vocal religious right moving into politics. The list of statements of conscience and other resolutions passed at General Assemblies from 1961 on follows all these trends and reads like a timeline of American social activism. Social justice is part of our organizational DNA, as both the Unitarians and the Universalists long held that living religiously meant that the beliefs we espouse within our sanctuary walls need to be expressed in the wider community. As organizations, this has been done through the passing of resolutions and statements of conscience, not only to let our collective voices be heard in the wider community, but also as calls to action, most resolutions having specific action items for the association, for our congregations, and for our individual members. Deeper changes also become evident when our congregations gather, as Richard, I'm sure, has noticed. Changes in the way we worship, changes in the music we share, changes in the way we govern ourselves, changes in our theologies and in the multitude of ways that we express our faith, changes in the demographic of our denomination and our struggle to be relevant across the generations. This year, I was particularly aware of an underlying sense of anxiety that was oddly enough juxtaposed by a sense of renewed optimism. The anxiety, I think, is based on the continuing movement in our country and culture away from organized religion. The recent Pew study reported that over the last 7 years, the share of Americans who aren't part of any religion has grown significantly, rising from 16 to nearly 23% of the population. Studies tell us that each day, 3,500 people walk away from their religious affiliation, many of whom say organized religion is just not as relevant for them as it used to be. The interesting thing is that for half of these people, religion is still very or somewhat important. And they are the folks who say that they are spiritual but not religious. As a movement, we know, at least we sense, that some of these people would find a home within Unitarian Universalism if we could only reach them. But unfortunately, we haven't figured out a way to do that. Our congregations are also graying, if you hadn't noticed. And while the visible and vocal youth and young adult caucuses at General Assembly are an inspiration, a true inspiration, they do not represent a growing trend in our movement, at least in terms of numbers. The Pew report indicated that more than a third of millennials, those aged 18 to 33, are religiously unaffiliated, and that the proportion is even greater in the younger half of that cohort. So there's a sense among Unitarian Universalists that we need to become more relevant or face a slow extinction along with many of the more mainline Protestant denominations. The optimism could not have been more evident than on the Friday of GA when the morning business session was interrupted to celebrate It's a Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage. I couldn't imagine a better place to be at that moment than on a convention floor with 2,000 other wildly happy Unitarian Universalists. The magnitude of this decision and the significant role that many of our individual members, our congregations, and our association has played in bringing this about should not be understated, and does indeed give us an example of what we can do as a compassionate people who come together and actively live out our faith in the wider world. In telling his own stories, the Reverend Rob Hardy's minister at All Souls Unitarian Church in Washington, D.C., spoke eloquently to one aspect of our movement being at a crossroads. As a legally married gay man who, with his partner, is father to a young adopted son, he can see personally how far we have come in the 22 years since he discovered Unitarian Universalism in Portland, Oregon. He knows personally the passion and effort it has taken to make what was once considered a pipe dream into a personal reality. But now Rob is faced with a different challenge, as his son Nico is of mixed race. Rob understands that regardless of who his son becomes on the inside, despite anything he might achieve in life, in this country, he will always be judged by his outward appearance. Rob talked about the fact that this is what keeps him up at night, a concern not only for his own son's future, but for the future of a society that can create that kind of a disparity in the way we treat people simply by glancing at the color of their skin. But what gets Rob up in the morning is a desire to fashion a Unitarian Universalism that will offer the same kind of welcome, the same kind of safety, the same kind of space to express himself spiritually and emotionally as he was offered as a young gay man 22 years ago when he walked for the first time through the doors of a Unitarian Universalist congregation. An interesting way to do a little self-assessing. What keeps you up at night? And what gets you going in the morning? The Berry Street Lecture is given every year at GA on the afternoon before opening ceremonies. This year's lecturer was the Reverend Sean Parker Dennison. Sean serves as minister of the Tree of Life Unitarian Universalist congregation in McHenry, Illinois. Sean is a transgendered male who has had his own remarkable journey. But his message was not about that journey or the ongoing work in broadening our understanding and acceptance of trans people in our communities. Sean's message was about the kind of community, the kind of faith we need to become to be relevant to the disenfranchised, to the seekers, to the people who are spiritual but not religious. He said we need to be a people open to failure, because that's the nature of life and of relationships in the day-to-day world. It's the nature of reality. We fail often and sometimes miserably. And we are often affected by the mistakes of others. Sean said that what we need as a movement is a way to continually return to right relationship. We need to have the kind of theology of forgiveness that is built in as it is in other traditions. We can't and won't be perfect, even though that is a value that sometimes seems hard for Unitarian Universalists to shed. Sean's point is that without a way to return to right relation with each other and with the world when things fall apart, we are stuck in a pretense of perfection that is not particularly attractive. If we want to be relevant, if we want to attract the nuns or the duns, as he called them, back to engagement in the world, if we want to be the movement that stays relevant to youth and young adults, if we want to be the place where they see hope we need to change. As real human beings with hearts and minds and hands, imperfect and clumsy as they may be, we are better off sometimes leading with our heartbreak and humility rather than our perceived strength. This is a message that was echoed by the Reverend Martin Levanhar, who gave the sermon at the annual service of the Living Tradition, where new ministers and newly credentialed educators and musicians are welcomed into fellowship, where retirees are celebrated and where those who have passed are honored. Marlin compared Unitarian Universalism to America, saying neither has yet to reach its full promise. We need to be a faith of the free. We are a free religion, free from the kind of dogma and doctrine that can separate human beings from one another. But within our congregations, we have a culture that often does exactly that. We need to open our eyes and admit that we are not perfect, that while we have come a long way, our forebears did not necessarily see this faith as being mostly for a white, middle-class NPR listening audience. We have a message of unity and hope that the world desperately needs. But in order to live into our potential, we have to embrace failure and forgiveness, hard spiritual work. We need to admit that we don't have all the answers and that we still have a way to move forward that includes dealing with our own sense of privilege, our own fears, and accepting the reality of our own brokenness. And in doing so, showing the world that we are truly graced with the ability to be compassionate even more than we are competent. Sean Dennison articulated the question that each of the speakers I mentioned seemed to be asking. For whom does your heart break? The Ware Lecture, given on Saturday night, is often considered the climax of General Assembly. This year, Cornel West, one of the most provocative social critics of our day, offered the message. Before the lecture, he took the time to meet with the youth and young adult caucuses at GA. And he came before the assembly with a clear message. The young people of this country are looking for integrity and authenticity. And he offered up 4 questions for consideration, questions that he borrowed from W.E.B. Du Bois, who himself was asking the next generation how they were going to choose to live. These are 4 questions that are worthy of our consideration as Unitarian Universalists, not to get bound up in the rhetoric of philosophical discussion, but as questions to take with us in our backpack on our journey towards wholeness. Here are the 4 questions. How shall integrity face oppression? How shall integrity face oppression? What does honesty do in the face of deception? What does decency do in the face of insult? How does virtue meet brute force? These are difficult questions, but ones we need to consider as this movement moves forward. He spoke of Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., who chose to answer these questions with courage and by saying, I am a pacifist. Let me close with these words which Rob Hardy used in his talk. Dare to love. The world asks of us our all. The world comes to us with its deep hunger and asks of our gladness. The world comes to us with its brokenness and asks us to meet them in the same place. It asks of us our blessing. It asks of us our life. how will we answer? Let's use our closing hymn as our closing words. 1028, Standing on the Side of Love. Steve will once again lead us in song, and I urge you to rise and join in singing. 1014 is right.
Many of you marched in our MLK parade this past January, and we sang the chorus of this through much of our route, our walking route, so some of you are already familiar with the song.
Imagine singing that with 2,000 Unitarian Universalists. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. Have a great day.